All right, so in this video, we're going to actually start to create the messages part where our clients can message us in our portal. So to do that, we already have a messages page. This is the page that came with the Dittofi template. So let's go ahead and let's start cleaning this up so that, because we obviously don't need all of this stuff. So let's go ahead and let's start over here into this section. We'll just start cleaning this up. We do want to leave one of each, basically. Um, let's just grab the bigger div block. And same with this down below. We want to get rid of all, but we want to leave one red and one yellow. So we can remove everything else from that. And you want to make sure that you're using the breadcrumbs to see how I selected the entire div row. That way we're taking the entire row and not just like if I just click this and hit delete, it's only going to delete this red div block. It would leave this icon and everything. So by coming up in the breadcrumbs one, you can see how it encompasses the entire span of that. So let's do that. Okay, so we kind of left one and that's perfect. And let's go up here and let's click on this and let's go ahead and close this drop down so it's not in our way. Okay, perfect. Okay, so what we want to do now is on this side, we want to display all people who are listed as clients. And then we want to then see the messages that they have. So over here, we want to change this from just a single record to a repeating group. And let's go take a look at our table here. And in our table here, we can see that we have a couple people that have roles of clients. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create a backend action that will only return users that have this role as client. And then we'll then create a front end action for that. So let's start with the backend action. We're going to create a new action. We're going to call this get all clients. We'll add a trigger of endpoint. And for the variable, what we want to choose is a collection. We'll call this get all clients. And for the model, it will be the user's model. But now here we're going to implement this special where record. So we're going to say where role is equal to role client. Hit OK and save. Now, one of the things you have to watch out for is you see this triggered by endpoint. This response variable is set to none, but now we want to actually set that response variable to the one we just created. But if you forget to do that, then it's not going to return anything to you. So what I like to do at this point is I like to build the code, and then I like to test this backend action to make sure that it's only returning those two clients that we want, which are Becky and John Smith. Okay, so let's go ahead and run our action. Hit run. And we did get a 200 response code. And then notice here the records return. We got just Becky and we got John Smith. So we know that that backend action is now good. So now what we can do is we can go into our page. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and create a new front end action. And let me just move myself up a little bit here. New front end action. Let's first rename this action to get all clients. And we're going to add an event. This event is going to get all clients. And then this is going to be that new get all clients one that we did. Now it's important we fill this out. So we'll call this get all clients as, and then get all clients response. And we try to keep this naming convention the same. So whatever it says here I just like to append the word as to the end or response to the end, so I know how to identify them in the future. We'll go ahead and hit save. So at that point, this is going to go ahead and return all actions. But one of the things you might be noticing is we actually don't have a variable to store what we just returned as. So let's go back to our page. We'll go to variables and let's create a new app variable. We'll call this gets all, let's just call it get all clients. This is going to be a kind collection. Choose a model is going to be the user's model. Hit save. Get all clients. Okay, now we can go back to the front end action. And let's go ahead and get our clients, get all clients. Now that we have that variable set where this is going to return back this variable here with those two users that are in our table. First thing we want to do is we're going to add another event. This is going to be a flow control condition event. And basically, remember this response code here? This response code, we want to make sure that that response code is a 200. If you remember, if we go back into our backend actions, when we ran this and we got those two records back, this code was 200. So it's important that we check this 200 code in our front end action before we try to set the variable. So let's go back here. Let's change this to flow control condition. We'll add a condition here. We'll left click on add a condition. And for the condition, we're going to go to the event and that get all clients response number. And we'll click is equal to, and then we'll just search for HTTP. And we're looking for this HTTP success code, which is preset by Dittofi to be 200. That way we can say that if get all clients response is equal to 200, then we're going to perform an action on that. So we can even say that in the description to make sure response code is 200. I like adding those descriptions because in the if you come back in a month or two and you can't remember what you're doing, you can always look at that. Now, a little bit different. Click the three dots here. We're going to actually click this add event inside. And so basically it's going to say, if this is true, then we're going to then do this. So instead of run endpoint, what we're going to do is we're going to go down to variables and we're going to set a field. And we're going to do that variable that we just created. So let's call this get all clients collection. And that value then is going to be the event and then that get all clients as, that very first one that's actually storing those two records. And we'll hit save. Now, that really should be it for that. So let's go back to our front end here. What we're going to do is we're going to close this out. We're going to then go to click anywhere on the page and then see this div block that is right after the body. This is where I like to put my front end actions that will kind of load things up. So let's click on the lightning bolt up at the top. We're going to add a front end action. And this time the trigger is going to be on component did mount. That means that the page is visible. Let's go ahead and get all clients. Okay. And that should then give us that. Now what we need to do is go into this div block and we need to change this to be a repeating with. So notice what I did is I want to get the whole block. So if I would just click on just the email address, that's not going to do it. If you click on that, you'll see here that you can actually go up a div block, and see how that div block encompasses everything. That's where we're going to want to go ahead and set our repeating with. So click the gear icon, click repeating with. We're going to choose a variable, and now we're going to say get all clients. which is that variable that's getting returned back. Now that you have that set, we can go into the individual things and we can actually set them to be part of what that is. So let's start with the name. So we'll go to name and we'll go to variable. We'll go this time, we'll choose repeating group row. And let's do the business name here. So that'll give us the business name. Underneath the business name, what we can do is we can put the email address, which we should have up top here. Hit OK. That's going to give us the email address. And then what we can do is on the initials here, we can actually click on this and hit the gear icon. This time we're going to go variable, repeating group, row, and what we'll do is we'll go first name, but instead of hitting OK, we're going to actually hit back. And we're going to choose this formula because we're actually going to write a special formula here that will just return the initials of the person's first and last name. So we're starting off here. The reason why we did it this way is because this pre-fills out everything. We make sure it's in the correct format. We come inside the last curly brace here, and we just copy everything from up to row. So I'll Control-C to copy, or you could right-click and hit copy. And then we'll come just inside, and then we're going to add a bracket here, and we're going to say 0 and close bracket. And what that is a very special code. That is basically saying, let's say your name is John. If we leave this off, this would return John. By us putting this bracket with 0 and closing that bracket, it will actually just return just the first letter of John's name. So 0 is always the first letter of a variable. So we just told it now, if we hit OK and save it now, it would just say J for John. But we also want to have the S for Smith. So what we'll do is we'll add a plus sign here. And then remember how we copied this row all the way to the end of this first bracket? We'll just paste it again. And so instead of saying first name here, we're going to say last name. And then just like we added this curly bracket, this bracket with 0 and close bracket, we want to come right at the end of that and do that again for that. And just make sure that we are in the braces here. And it's giving me an error. So let's take a look and see what this error might be. Let's cross. I can see I missed a bracket here when I was copying. There we go. And that gives us a valid formula, which is what we're looking for. So just to reiterate, so we did the row first name. We added a bracket with 0. This is returning what's technically called the index. And the 0 is giving us the very first initial. So if your name's John, it's going to return J. Now, if we change this to 1, what would that give us? That would give us O, because that's the second letter in John. So J-O, and we only want J. Then we added a plus sign, and we pasted in that row last name. And then we gave that an index as well of 0, so that now we should get S for Smith. It's valid formula. We're going to go ahead and click OK. And let's do something. Let's just go ahead and build the code. And let's test it and make sure that it's actually working as expected. And as you can see here, it is returning Becky's Hair Salon. We have her email address, and notice the initials BF, and for John Smith, JS. So that part is working just fine. Next, in our next video, we're going to go ahead and see how we can actually make the message portion of it work.